So welcome to the Fit for the Future panel. I'd like to first introduce myself and then the team here. My name is Nikki Sherlock. I'm an events producer and strategist and have been for far too long. My background was in large corporate events, including some large sporting events. And over the last 12 years, I've worked on the 3 Olympics, running one of the big houses there for London, Rio, and Tokyo, this year, just coming up again. So let me pass over to Amelie.
Thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Amelie. I'm from Ascot Racecourse. I've been probably in the industry for about 18 years, corporate as well as social, all over the world, which has been very exciting, and decided to come back to the UK and focus at Ascot Racecourse, looking at all the events outside of racing.
Hi everybody, I'm Matt Brooke, the Managing Director of Tough Mudder and Spartan in the UK, which for those that don't know is mud running or obstacle course events that we're well known for. I've been in the mass participation sector for over the last decade and worked in a number of organisations from CSM Sport and Entertainment through to the Tour de France organisers, which is m.i.c.e Sports organisers.
Good afternoon all. Second racecourse representative here. I'm Simon Durrance. I'm from Epsom Downs Racecourse, General Manager there. I'm 9 days away from the Epsom Derby, so I might be scooting it quickly away from here. I've been within the industry, similar to Amelie, over 20 years, been part of a team that's delivered many Grand Nationals, Cheltenham Festivals and Derby Festivals as well. I think also it's fantastic, isn't it, to be here, not behind a VDU, watching on Zoom or Teams. So well done to the team putting this on, and yeah, long may it continue.
Absolutely. So I think over the last year, we can confidently say that the government has had a serious focus on trying to open the pubs and trying to open large-scale sporting events. I'd say, that has been a focus. Sport, whether it's people participating in it or people going to watch athletes, is beneficial in so many ways. And I know that the government has been looking to support that. What we'd like to do as a panel is look at what's happened over the last year and what changes have been made that are possible for us to keep going, and what innovations have been created to help us in the future, and then open the floor to everyone to just ask us any questions. So if I start with Simon, racing industry was one of the first, I think, to allow elite sport back in during the pandemic. How did you prepare your venues, your teams, and your industry, especially with the fact that, it's been so up and down, hasn't it? 1 minute you're open and then there's a new change. So with the constant changes and the health and safety issues, how did you and your team find yourself best prepared?
It wasn't easy, was it? It wasn't easy for any of us. It was tough. Racing stopped sometime mid-March, and the industry died, like so many. I get that, but from a racing point of view, it just died. And through our association with the British Horse Racing Authority, the BHA, the RCA, Racecourse Association, and then individual racecourses who really came together, and I think that's one of the pieces to take from this, that really came together. We might compete as racecourses and industries, but for this, there's a real joint togetherness, wasn't there? So we came together, and let's remember that it's not just about race courses. There are so many other people involved, so many other stakeholders involved, trainers, jockeys, the people that produce the show, betting shops, etc., etc., etc. So it was important for us to be able to say, we're an elite sport, we can provide a safe environment and welcome racing back. So we work together with those people, important stakeholders such as safety advisory groups, such as Public Health England, local councils, really creating that partnership, that stakeholder piece that says we're going to move together. So from a personal point of view, racing resumed end of May, beginning of June in 2020, but it was all behind closed doors, wasn't it? For those of you that followed any of it, it was surreal. The only people we had there were the essential staff in effect, and of course the horse. So we ran last year's Derby Day on the wrong day. It's supposed to be the first Saturday in June. It ended up being the first Saturday in July. Why? Because you can't just stage a race meeting on any day. There's a pattern to be followed. You need to run the race at Newmarket first, etc., etc., etc. But by piecing it all together, by talking, by communicating, by really wanting to strive together, it really helped us. You mentioned staff as well. That was one of the trickiest things for us, and I'm sure for many people within this room. We'd furloughed so many people, so many of our teams, because it saved us money. Therefore, the person that normally held the rope near the winner's enclosure wasn't available, they weren't there. So this was an opportunity for the staff that were still involved with the teams to do something different, to learn a new trade, if you like, and actually that helped a lot of us through it. There were people that didn't want to be furloughed, clearly, and there were people trying to fulfill a role. That's really helped us going forward. We now have kind of a multi-skilled task force and people that want to try something new. So it wasn't easy. It certainly isn't easy still, but we are learning. And I think one of the key pieces is how we've worked together and used this opportunity to perhaps reset, perhaps think, we don't need to do this all the time in the same way. Let's change, let's tweak, let's stop, let's think. And during that period, I think that's really benefited us, actually.
Were there any specific health and safety activations that you created that you're quite proud of, or that you think could be useful to other venues or other people setting up large-scale events?
Yeah, I think because we were dealing with elite athletes, jockeys, the BHA and the RCA worked very well together in creating an app, a health questionnaire, training modules that we all, as part of delivering this product, had to go through beforehand. So even now, we go through a health questionnaire before each meeting, testing us for COVID, etc., asking us, have we been in touch with anyone with COVID, have we received our training module, so that there is a sense of confidence, if you like, that when you arrive at a racecourse, whether you be a member of staff, trainer, jockey, valet, member of the stable staff team, you are safe to enter that environment. So I think that's something we've really learned going forward.
Fantastic. Matt, I'll move to you. I think I just want to follow up on what you were saying there. The confidence, not only of your staff, but of the people who are attending, whether they're an audience, but even more so, I think, with you and your sport, where people are actually participating in the sport as a mass, getting them to feel confident in your policies and what you're doing. How did you manage the marketing of that and the creation of that confidence?
That's certainly a great question, and I actually think there's many different avenues and approaches that we can take, and we have taken, and we're going to continue to take, because we're also part of a life cycle ourselves in this process in terms of getting back to eventing and getting back to having large crowds together. And obviously the event pilot scheme that's come out is testament to reassuring fans, attendees, participants that it's safe to do so. But that never negates obviously one's individual opinion on returning. A lot of what we're doing obviously at the moment within Tough Mudder and Spartan is all about education. And it's about educating so that somebody feels prepared and feels armed with the right tools, knowledge, to not only give them the best opinion in terms of the judgments that they're going to make and the behaviour that they're going to exhibit, but also that we've thought of what is required to make them feel safe, to make them feel secure, and ultimately to reduce transmission. And that's not only from about actual on-site delivery, but it's also about reforming how we would normally communicate to our customers before they arrive on site and what that customer journey looks like. And we do a lot of, we have these fantastic email sends and campaigns that engage and inspire and get you ready to do your event. But now what that's gone from is also well, hang on a minute, how do you, we normally segment that based on the type of customer, so if it's a repeat customer or a return customer or somebody that does things regularly or not. And all of a sudden we've now got this sort of fourth element, which is about educating in terms of mental approach to and one's preference to COVID and how they will adjust. And one of the big things that we're it'd be interesting to see and probably have some questions on, but it's just about anxiety on a return to to live events as not only even staff, but not only customers, but also our staff. And again, how we're going above and beyond in that through content that we're creating. That's not even necessarily about the event itself, but it's just about how you manage re-education and re-assimilation into environments like we're all sitting in right now. And I could almost guarantee, and I could happily raise my hand, if you weren't slightly apprehensive before coming into the hall today with meeting lots of people for the first time that you've not otherwise done so. And I think it goes back down to, it's a lot about education. It's a lot about bringing to life the adjustments that you've made, the operational adjustments, so that that people are going to understand what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to sound like, what it's going to, what their experience is going to be like, knowing that it's not necessarily going to be what it once was.
Especially with your Tough Mudder, where it's very, they're holding onto each other's legs, throwing them through things. It's it's very contact sport.
It's teamwork. That's what we always say. Teamwork. Our whole entire brand is built on the notion of teamwork and team experience and overcoming obstacles together. So to be able to flip that and say, well, hang on a minute, it's teamwork with a difference. Because obviously, we're not going to stray too far from it. But again, that is a whole re-education piece in itself, and how we review the approaches on site on the day, and just what people expect.
I think that one of the main things I'm sure we all agree in any event is managing expectations. It's one of the biggest bylaws that we've learned over the years, and the problem that we're facing is that the expectations the regulations keep changing in order for us to manage those expectations. But I think what you're talking about there is so true, that if we can communicate so that their expectations when they arrive are not just met but exceeded in terms of the environment, that's really important. Thank you for that. I think I just want to flag that there was an announcement this morning that I think you'll be very happy about. Do you just want to share?
Yeah, it's ultimately the return of Parkrun. So probably, I don't know if any of you here are within the space that obviously Tough Mudder and Spartan operate in, but obviously the mass participation world and active world. And finally, with much lobbying and council and MP debate, that it's been cleared that Parkrun from next month is returning across the board, which I think goes some way. We obviously, that's a social enterprise that not only does it bring communities together in an appropriate and fun way, but it's also doing its bit for health and well-being, and which is, as we all know, is one of the major drivers to overcoming or combating the impacts and the effects of COVID. So I think it's fantastic, and hopefully it's the start of many things, such as including ourselves, to return.
Yeah. Amelie, I think also there's been yet another announcement today. I don't know whether you just want to share with the audience about that.
Sure. So we've got Royal Ascot taking place in 3 weeks, which we're very excited to host with people back on site. We were originally going to go to 4,000, and we've just been announced this morning that we will be a pilot event where we will allow 12,000 per day, which is very exciting. We're just trying to work through all the guidelines and sort of details, and the communication piece that Matt just mentioned is huge in terms of going from 4,000 to 12,000, from social distancing to now being a pilot event, and the restrictions that we may or may not have and that we don't know yet. So we're very excited as a whole in terms of a venue, but everyone is all hands on deck right now, back in the office, trying to work out from health and safety to getting all the food in as well. That's a big jump in terms of the catering side of things. There's shortages attached to chocolate, which we didn't know about, attached with Brexit. So it's just all these little things that we're just coming across, and excited to actually sort of come together in less than 3 weeks, when we typically would start probably in January, February in terms of planning.
And I couldn't agree more. It's sort of gone, I feel like the last 2 weeks we've entered silly season from an events or sports perspective. It's just gone crazy. Have you got any suggestions of or recommendations of the way you as a very large organisation have managed these sort of sudden changes and shifts in different protocols? How do you have like a morning get together, how do you make sure that these changes are met, and with potentially reduced staff, that they're covered, and with suppliers maybe, being slightly on furlough, how you increase suddenly everything?
I think probably everyone in the events industry went from organising an event attached to experience to then understanding everything about health and safety, vaccines, testing, temperatures, and all sorts of things. So we had to become health and safety experts as such. So within the company itself, we had 3 COVID experts. So myself would focus on business events. We had Joe that would focus on the racing side of it, attached to the BHA and the RCA. And then we had a third person that focused on the hospitality, the food catering side of things. And it was very much, we would report probably once a week and just say, what are your findings? This is my interpretation. We'd regroup, question, challenge one another, and then very much ask for some advice. So we would probably say this time in the last year, we've collaborated with so many venues, like Simon mentioned before. All the race courses have come together, but also all the sporting venues have come together. We've been in touch with the world of football as well, that what are you guys doing? What do you think of this? This is what we've done. So there's a lot of support out there, whereas beforehand it was very much, this is our venue, this is what we do. And we all sort of became support for one another, from listening to understanding really, oh, you're in these shoes, I know how you feel, was actually quite morally quite satisfying for us all to understand that.
Do you know what? I could not agree more. I think one of the things that I have found the most inspiring over the last 14 months is that I feel you can only really succeed in large events, in big sporting events, if you're a team player. Anyone who's just out for themselves and won't carry that trestle table, or do you mind, I urgently need you to do the tick list, from the most senior person to the most junior, if you're not a team player, and I would say that the last 14 months has shown me personally how incredible events world. I knew it was before, but it just showed it. And I think what you're talking about there, you two run different race courses, and yet, in the green room, you were supporting each other, helping each other, offering, different advice, and it makes me so proud of our industry.
Perhaps if I can come in there quickly as well. No one wanted this pandemic. It's been awful for everyone, hasn't it? But as an industry, the events industry was probably best placed to deal with it. It's what we do all the time. We deal with change. We deal with things that don't go quite according to plan. So no one's enjoyed this, clearly, but we have had the right people involved throughout to be able to pick up the phone, and we might have needed some cabins or some tentage, not for the same reasons that we've ever needed them before, but having those relationships and having that can-do attitude. I think as an industry, we were the right ones to be dealt with that, if you like, and to move with it. So, yeah, long may it continue.
I think it comes across with other venues, but also with our suppliers. So in terms of partnerships, we obviously had to move a lot of racing side of it. For Royal Ascot, we're not building anywhere near as much as what we would typically do. So we've had to rely on our suppliers in terms of working with them, and it's been a transparent relationship in terms of we physically can't do this, or let's see how we can help and support one another. And that's really sort of emerged from this pandemic as well, the fact that there are these partnerships out there and people are wanting to build these partnerships with you, and it makes you feel like you're not alone. They are on the journey with you all the way through.
I sort of digressed from my original question to you, Emily, so I'll just say, Ascot's a large venue. What have you done anything different over the last 14 months of the type of events that you hold there, or how you brought the revenue in during these difficult times?
Sure. So as Simon mentioned, racing was behind closed doors, so we didn't have any customers on site except for owners and sometimes trainers. So outside of racing, we very much read the rules, the guidelines, and put some documentation ready to go to build customer confidence about we're the experts, we're here to support you. So we did all sorts of events. We've been a filming location in terms of unit basis, which is very large in the area. We've been a drive-in cinema. Drive-in has been massive now in terms of who thought, this was going to come back and be huge. But we've been driving cinemas. We've had one particular event that has been with us all the way through, a car auction that we've converted, probably changed the event 3 times now, depending on the guidelines, and we've turned it into an outdoor market. Then we went into an auction and non-retail rules and guidelines. So it's been very exciting to very much get these inquiries come through and think outside the box. And I think the original question of how is the team going to manage all these things is that they've been on the journey with us. It's not just been management looking at all the things. We've very much kept them all in the loop, and they've got great ideas. They were going to these drive-through events. They were going to all these venues. We thought, why not bring it here? And we have a lot of land, so it was a great opportunity to just think, right, okay, what can we do? And then, we started to do that. Drive-throughs was the most popular in terms of things. I think we did a Christmas drive-through for the veterans that was all over the UK, which was fantastic to see them all outside their cars when there was, music and dancing. We still had a bit of festivity sort of coming to Ascot.
And I'm sure that a lot of these innovations that different venues and companies are making will stay with us, that might not have been considered when we were all just churning through our standard busy day-to-day life. My next question is actually both to Simon and Matt. You run multiple venues, and you're all over the UK. How have you found it dealing with the local health officials versus the government versus your own health and safety? Because I imagine there's lots of people pulling in different directions. And would you have any advice?
I'll go first, Simon. It's a really interesting one, Nikki, to say the least. And for all operators out there, we as Tough Mudder, Spartan, we don't own our venues. We go to other venue holders and landowners, and we work with them. But what that means is that we're going to 20 different local authority regions and councils across the UK. And what's been really, really interesting through this process is that there is no one set process. Easiest way to put it is that in itself is one of the largest challenges that we found to overcome so far, Nikki. And it's what is whilst there is a broad government framework and a guideline, obviously our steps and our roadmap to and out of this and what's permissible or not, and that in itself is so broad, and it's up for interpretation to the local authorities that we are visiting and we're working with, the different factions of public health, England, Scotland, Wales, and again the regional nuances as to who picks that up and what they're willing to permit or not permit within that framework. And as a result, whilst we first approached this during 2020 as a business, with that's fine. We can create a clear, unified COVID set of plans, and for our Tough Mudder business, it's called being COVID tough, believe it or not. And for our Spartan, it was called the Unbreakable Code, and it was about that these are the guidelines and the how we're going to operate our events in a manner which will overcome COVID. And what we found is that there is just no one size fits all practice or policy right now. And we're needing to adapt things or introduce things or remove things based on that one particular local authority and what they deem is appropriate or not appropriate. And and that's we've got local authorities at the moment where we're having to deliver pre and post testing for all participants. There are other local authorities which, we're having a discussion on whether or not you can just have food and beverage outlets. But there has been no clear consistency across the board, and I think that's one of the most challenging sort of current state or the environment that we're operating in, which I think and I know other mass participation organisers, event organisers will find that when you're operating across multiple sites as well. So I know you'll have that. But that's what we need as an industry, is a lot tighter and clearer guidance to be able to empower the local authorities and the council and the public health representatives that we're going to as to what is the right or wrong decision.
I can only endorse everything that Matt has said and completely agree with him. Different safety advisory. I need to be careful now. I don't want to embarrass any local councils or safety advisory groups, so I won't be mentioning any names. But different councils, different safety advisory groups. but the same set of instructions, but interpreted so differently. And we have found that difficult. And I think our added disadvantage is that we're not comparing two racecourses that are identical. Ascot and Kempton, for example, couldn't be more different, but we're trying to interpret and deliver to the guidelines and the restrictions. So, yep, they're there, and unfortunately, Matt, you're absolutely right. Some SAGs, some PHEs will want you to sit down, stand up, keep moving and drinking, and others want face masks on, steppings, others don't. So interpreting it has been tough, and all I can really say there is that continual talking and dialect within our own industry has really helped. So where Lingfield has struggled with one thing, Newmarket hasn't, how have Newmarket delivered it? What can Lingfield take to local council and say, this is how Newmarket perhaps have been able to deliver, what do you think? And in the main, the relationships that you have with local councils, PHE, are key. If you've got a good way in and you can pick up the phone to your EHO or whoever it might be, you're halfway there. You really are. And I don't think they want to put up the barriers. They want to get it right as well. They don't want to be the ones that cause another outbreak or whatever it might be. So they want to do it right, but they also are really keen to get industry back working with you. So start talking would probably be one of my key.
Yeah, I definitely, I'd definitely say that. It is take what your normal planning cycle, with the exception obviously for 3 weeks for Ascot, but take your normal planning cycle and add 4, 6, 8 weeks onto that. You know, if you're thinking about things in the autumn, September is definitely a sweet spot for events. But be starting those conversations now. Be on the front foot to be presenting a suite of documentation, because, as I said, you're gonna find things and be requested to do things that you might not otherwise think, because it's not happened in another local authority or SAG region. And I think that's there is never enough time, but certainly being on the front foot, I completely agree with that, Simon.
And just a question to you all: what innovations do you think your team have created over the last 12 months, or new ideas that you're probably going to hold on to? I know that you referred to some, the brainstorming with the younger parts of your team, and also all these sort of drive-through and stuff. But I know that originally we were talking as a team about, now when we all go to the pub, we take our seats, we order on the app, the drinks get delivered. And one of the frustrations for a lot of people when they watch a sporting event with a half time, like a Twickenham, is that you end up in that queue for the beer, and you miss the goal, and you're late back to your seat. And now with these new sort of, even if they slightly soften the social distancing, it might be that we can order on apps, we can get delivery. There's some real positives that are going to only increase our enjoyment of sport. And even not in your own industry, what are those positives you think that have come out of the last 12 months?
So racing can sometimes be seen to be a bit behind. fair point. So for us, the ability and the desire now to go more digital is key. So you've already mentioned the app, and that's exactly what we'll all be doing going forward. You'll be sat at a table, you'll order from an app, but you'll also see your race card on your screen as an app. If you've been racing historically, you'll have bought a £3.50 or a £5 or a £15 race card at Ascot, and that will take you through the runners and riders. Things have changed. To have it on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever, that's the way forward. So because we've had to do it like this for the last 12 months or so, because handing out something hasn't been COVID compliant, we'll continue doing it, and it makes it so much simpler. So for us, the digital piece is key.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I think the technology, we have been a bit behind, because some of the venues that we have are just so quirky and different, and we're just having to think outside the box. So we've redesigned an app, QR codes are everywhere now, so we're really sort of jumping on that as well. And we're just seeing how we can really sort of modernise the venue and sort of take it that little bit further. So tech, I think, is huge for us, I would probably say.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with that. like yourselves, obviously going from overnight from a business which is reliant on a live experience to not having a live experience or a domain in which you can deliver that, you have to embrace digital, and that's not only from a customer standpoint. I think that that's just as a brand and a business. The one thing that I think for us definitely in Tough Mudder and Spartan, we'll look at, is just about understanding the customer and that consumer journey more. And what this has taught us is that you've had to completely redefine what that customer journey is, from the point of what's the point in which they're going to commit to your experience or your event. What's the point in which you're then going to take them through before you get to that, and that the education piece, the content piece, the engaging, the engaging content. What's then the point of education to get them onto the site? All their behaviours, everybody's behaviour has changed so dramatically in COVID. We were just having, as a panel, a discussion about returning to the office and team and what's needed or what's not. But that ripples through all of our audiences to the very core. And therefore, what we once thought was a way in which you present your product, your event, or you liaise with our suppliers or our contacts all the way book, like all of that's changing. And I think for us, it's therefore, the biggest thing that we've taken away, or we will take away, is just to challenge the status quo more than we've ever done before. Yes, things work, which is great, and we've all done that as organisers. Things work, you get great feedback. Why change? But actually, you should probably ask yourself why change, because the world in which we're operating is ever changing at the moment. And yeah, I think that's one of our biggest takeaways, beyond obviously tech and digital.
I think just to add to that, we're also sort of looking at the on-site experience, and we've said obviously technology and things, but for us, one of the things that we obviously were successful with is the campaign at home, and it's focusing on the experience at home as well. So, last year, one of the big learnings was the fact that we have this massive following and no one could be on site, so we designed Ascot at home, and the activation at home as well as on site was huge, and that's something that will definitely be moving forward in terms of, if you can't come to Royal Ascot, if you can't come to a race meeting, how can we still include you in that sort of buzz and get that buzz at home? Because we have so many people partying, having garden parties and really joining in. So I think we want to continue that and really sort of evolve that so that everyone's sort of welcome.
Fantastic. I will open it to anyone in the audience if there were any questions. Down here. Oh, I think there's one down here. She's just going to bring you the microphone.
Hi there. I know that you were talking earlier about Ascot being part of the events pilot testing programme, and I think Kempton was as well a few weeks back. Obviously, the government are then going to give their recommendations down the line on what they think people should be doing at each of these events. Do you think that you would take testing on as a sort of, like you would choose to get people tested before coming in, just to give that added reassurance of all the crowds coming into your events? Because I would think that would be obviously the height of safety, seeing as health questionnaires, for example, don't necessarily cover asymptomatic people.
Well, I think...
Take first.
Over to you.
Throughout all of this, we've worked with government, with DCMS, to make sure that whatever we are putting on is safe. Take anything away from the events industry, it's got to be safe. So we will listen, we will consider, and it will be part of what we do. Who's to say that coming into this exhibition next year might not require us to do lateral flow testing, PCR testing, etc., etc. So I think it's important for us to understand and listen to what is being advised and suggested. The most important part of it, whether it be testing or otherwise, is to ensure that those people coming to our events are confident that they are coming to a safe environment, whether that be a test, whether that be a questionnaire, whether that be track and trace through the barcode, etc. I think there are going to be many people, and again as a panel we were talking about how confident we are. I think Matt mentioned it right at the beginning. He was apprehensive coming into an auditorium like this today. That's going to be the same for all of events, whether it be racing, the cinema, theme parks, etc. So whether it be testing or not, I don't know. but we do need to create that layer of confidence for everyone to return and try and get back to some form of normality.
I completely agree, Sam. Just I guess to further that question, for us at in Tough Mudder and Spartan, it's actually about what do we feel is appropriate for our customer and our consumer, and that's actually what's leading our discussion and implementation of pre or post testing, rather than what a government guideline or framework is. Because if you can't create that environment that demonstrates that it's safe, that it's secure, that it's got all of the relevant requirements for a customer, then that person's never going to come back, or it's never going to come to you, or never going to come back or book. So I think it's for us it's a bit of a twofold, and I would definitely lead with the question of your event as to, do you think that's appropriate and what your consumer wants first, before necessarily being reliant on the framework?
Like if we take the international events, so if we take Tokyo, for example, it is very much government-led. So the regulations that have just come out for health and safety for all of us working out in Tokyo are phenomenal. They are an enormous book. And the rules of where me as a non-Japanese, non-local IOC person can go are formidable. And they've created an app. They are working hard to protect the local people there, because that's their job. So it can go from being relatively relaxed here when you compare it to what they're doing in Japan. And I think we've all got to be prepared for, as much as we can, for whichever way that the government advises us to go. But when we look at such a big endeavour as the Olympics, they are still managing to keep it going whilst keeping it as safe as possible. There's no definitive answer there, is there? I'm afraid. Any other questions? Excuse me. Just coming.
Thank you. So just following off that, so would you, as for your staff and your team, would you do the testing yourselves then at all, to just clarify for visitors to feel like they know that they may not need to test, but the people looking after the event are looking after that area?
Yeah, I'll happily answer that one. So for our first event, that's in July, we have PCR testing for the entire team that will come on site, and then every 3 days there will be lateral flow tests, and that's because our build on sites has lasted about 3 weeks. So that means every single member of our team will have the assurance that we have also not brought it to our what is then a safe and secure and sterile site. I don't know whether or not that's what you guys are delivering as well.
So from a racing point of view, we ran through, similar to a pilot actually, we went through 6 weeks of compulsory LFT testing, one-to-one with someone watching you with the swab in your throat, which was all lovely. There were no cases generated during that pilot. That's not to say that it wasn't captured, we understand that, but moving forward, whilst not compulsory today, we strongly recommend that all of our staff and partners on site will carry out an LFT similar to the kids going to school on 2 days leading up to the event type scenario, so that then we capture as much data and can as confidently as we can go into the event knowing that we have a healthy team.
For me as an agency, I did my first event last week, straight after the 17th of May, and we lateral flow tested every member of staff, every caterer, every person on site 2 days before. And that was a pure choice on our side to show our clients that we were doing everything we could to protect them. So although there's no hard, fast rule, I really feel that everyone, will be doing their best to protect their clients, because you want them to be coming back.
It's also probably the staff element. It's your people. You want your people to feel safe and confident. They're not going to be the same if they're nervous all the way through, and it's going to come across to your customers. So it's all about asking the question, how do you all feel? We did a questionnaire before they all came back to the office. And just to answer those questions and put them at ease. So we're doing exactly the same in terms of testing before Royal Ascot. So we'll do all of that for any mass events, and just be there to support them with anything from, you know, working from home all the way through to now coming back on site. It is a tough adjustment for people, and I think everyone probably is adjusting to managing people differently as well. So I'll probably say it's a bit of everything really with people.
The one thing for me, the last thing which has been is really, really interesting is we obviously work with a host of suppliers and contractors who come onto site, and it's also about seeing, you know, we as an event organizer obviously have a right to be able to demonstrate that we've taken the relevant steps to not only ensure the safety of our participants but also our staff, but the wealth of suppliers and contractors that are coming to us and saying this is within our framework, so you're contracting us, and we ourselves are going to take it upon ourselves to deliver X, Y, and Z and feed into your framework, which has been really, really refreshing. And, you know, I think it goes back to that sort of sharing the load, sharing the burden here as to what is, to make us come back and make it safe. And, you know, I can only, if we have suppliers or contractors within the audience that, just as a, you know, as a booking, as an operator that we do, it's been really refreshing to see. And if you're not necessarily doing it, I would certainly advise maybe to think about it.
And I just to add, even just taking the testing out of it, you know, I was working on a huge project for later this year, and we were advised by our scaffolding and marquee builders that they were creating a double crew. They were separating their crew, putting one in one hotel, one in another hotel. They also had a backup guy on call the entire time nearby within a drive, because obviously if one person in one bubble gets identified as positive, that whole bubble goes down. And when you're working to schedule, you need to have sort of two bubbles. So we had it was more costly, but it was more important to us and to our client, because there's transparency throughout, that it was done in time to schedule. So we had 2 shifts working like this with cleaning before you went on site. And I think this is where the suppliers that, you know, I've been in the event world for, you know, nearly 30 years now, trusted, loved suppliers will advise back up to us. We can then advise the client, talking as an agency, of the way it's got to be. And we really rely on the supplier's input for that, from down to that whole bubble situation, right the way through. And it's a lovely teamwork when it comes together.
I'd just like to add on to that, Nikki. You mentioned suppliers, we call them partners at the racecourse. I think it's worthy, especially as we're here today, to thank the suppliers as well, because they've lived through some tough times with us. And now, as venue organisers, we owe it back to them almost that we're coming back to life, fingers and toes crossed. So let's work with our suppliers that have been with us through those good times and less good times, and let's go on that journey together. So yeah, from an industry point of view, great time to say thank you.
I think we've got a few minutes for one more question if there is one. No? I think all good then. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you around the show later.
Thank you.
Thank you.